All right, team. Welcome to the Boulder Athlete Podcast. I'm Josh, and I get to hang out with Jason today. Jason, I always look forward to these because we go behind the scenes on what you've been thinking about in terms of the upcoming cycle. And I just find that incredibly interesting. I think the community finds it interesting as well. So thanks for making time.
Absolutely. I very much love this. Programming has become something that I really study. I really love. As you know, via the messages that I send you and the team, I do put a lot of thought into this and a lot of sweat equity, I would say, on my side. Like, this is really important. It's important to me as an athlete, making sure that I'm on the right trajectory towards my goals. And then, of course, support the entire community across the bandwidth of like the elite track, compete track, core track, scale track, middle track, to make sure everyone is getting the recipe that's appropriate for what we're going for in those tracks. So yeah, it's great. It's a love, it's a passion. Um, and it's the bedrock of what we do in Boulder.
Heck yeah. Well, your passion comes through in the level of detail that gets infused into these, and I benefit from it tremendously, and as does the community. Today, we're going to get into more of that. And so, right now, we are wrapping the surge cycle, which I've really enjoyed, and we made some little tweaks to that. We're going to get into the next cycle. I'll let you drop the bomb on what that's going to be called and why it's called that and all the things infused. But, like we did with the last behind the scenes, I'd love for you to touch on, are there going to be any noticeable like shifts? Like, hey, we used to do a thing on Monday and now we're going to do a thing on Tuesday, that kind of a thing, as well as here's the strategy behind the way this is laid out, which I know you'll get into. You and I have spent time talking about that, and I really love it. So, without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and pull this visual up that I think is going to help guide this conversation a little bit. So, let's have a look. All right. So, surge cycle from the past. Boom. We're moving into Jason. Take it away.
Yeah. So we call that the past. It is the past. And when we release this podcast, it'll be more towards the past. We're recording this with one more push week in the surge cycle. But the surge cycle was really about accumulation. We were really widening the foundation, preparing for qualifiers, which are starting in just a few weeks. We think about the Open, we think about quarterfinals, and then multiple in-person semifinals, the in-affiliate semifinals. And so, we've been laying this solid foundation, and the next cycle, it doesn't have a fancy name. Let's just keep it clear. It's the qualifier cycle. I mean, there's no better name for it. And not every athlete and Boulder athlete is a competitor. However, there's still, we hope that most of the athletes will be doing the CrossFit Open. And so on the tracks like the core track, it'll be sort of an emphasis on being great for that, that annual worldwide competition. And for the compete in elite tracks, this is where we'll be, really moving from sort of a preparatory cycle to an execution cycle. And that's really what the qualifier cycle is all about. It's about executing, being ready to execute at the highest level. And we'll even talk about certain things like, where we'll be training through the Open, the train through. We'll talk about the bridge between the elite and the compete track, and why the elite track has what we would call battery work. We'll get into all of that, but yeah, the drum roll is it's a qualifier cycle, and we're sharpening the tip of the spear, if we want to think of it that way. We're not laying foundations. We're just sharpening our movement patterns. We're sharpening our ability to execute at the highest level. We're introducing a significant amount of interference in our training. And interference is this idea that rarely in these tests, like the Open quarterfinals, semifinals, rarely do we get to express our fitness fresh. We often are expressing our fitness under duress, under fatigue. We don't have to do tests to build the capacity for that. That's where we do training, or we introduce interference into our training in order to build that capacity, to build the callus to, for example, do a 15 calorie sprint row and then move a heavy barbell. That is it's a particular skill that you have to develop, and you will be tested not like that, but will be tested in these qualifiers.
Yeah, I really like the term interference. Not only does it sound, you know, somewhat scientific in this context, but it's very accurate. And the examples that come to mind for me are similar to what you just shared, which is like all the battery work. Initially, when I first started that and got introduced to it, it was like a shock to the system for sure. But now I've really come to love those, and where I actually have some output in the interference piece, which is like an echo bike or the Concept 2 rower or something like that, and then going to do some jerks or cleans or whatever and move something heavy. Initially, my ability to move that heavy thing was really limited because I couldn't operate well under this interference. And it shined a light on a clear like weakness or opportunity area for me. And that always seems to get exposed during like the open or quarterfinals or whatever. And so now having trained so much of that very intentionally, man, going into this open, I've never been so confident, if I'm being honest. I hope this to be my most successful open. While this is not what I'm peaking for, I hope it's better than it's been in the past. So I'm excited about all the training we put in, and I love that term interference.
I do too, and it's something that I've been doing for a number of years now. I it wasn't until maybe we started talking about it, maybe last year, a year and a half ago, when you were really being introduced to it, and it was really the first direct feedback loop for me, uh, from someone else who was experiencing it for the first time. Like, I remember when I was trialing it or testing it myself, thinking this is craziness to do an echo bike sprint and then a front squat into a jerk or something like that as an example. I remember thinking like, I can't breathe. I can't, I don't know if I can do this lift at 85% under the fog of fatigue. And what's amazing about building that muscle, that particular skill set, is that you're rewiring, in a sense, the neural pathways to be able to do this. And it's not easy. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's cute. Interference is a really fun word. I love saying it, but it is in execution really tough,
Yeah.
really tough. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's not something that like you join Boulder Athlete and next week you go RX on a battery piece. You're just like, yeah, let's do it. What's written, I do it. It is definitely something to work your way into. Those that are new to the program, they might see something like this and on the first set realize this is an absolute no-go. And that's totally fine. That's normal, in fact, where it makes some sense to dial that, maybe the percentage back a little bit and build your confidence, build your capacity, build your CNS connecting all those wires so that you can actually do that. And in no time, after a couple of months, as you know, and I know, you start to look forward to the challenge of the battery style work or the interference work. Maybe we're talking about lifting a heavy barbell, but it also affects, higher skill movements. And we do that quite often as well. And we'll see this in this cycle where we are maybe doing something like a 15-calorie for men, 12 calories for ladies sprint on the ski erg, and then express a set of ring muscle ups. And it's wild. It's wild what it steals your ability. It steals your ability to do these muscle ups the way you normally would. But if you think about when we're tested, we're rarely ever tested with a fresh set of muscle ups. And again, this is this idea that we're building the capacity to jump up on those rings or jump up on that bar for bar muscle ups or high skill gymnastics piece before we think we're ready. And acclimate ourselves to doing those high skill movements. Again, I think I like that idea, under the fog of fatigue, the doubtfulness that you have in yourself. Like, I don't know if I can do this. I can barely breathe right now because I just got this heart rate going, and now I'm expected to do 5-7 ring muscle ups, which fresh would be no problem. But again, this is where this type of a cycle, and when we're preparing for sort of higher level competition, we do this. And this interference work is primarily for our compete and especially our elite tracks. And I think we talk about that on the next slide, Josh. Let's jump into that really quick, because I think this is important to talk about who does this kind of work that we're talking about. And then, of course, we have 7 total tracks. We have a bodybuilding track, we have a minimal equipment track, and then we have a second session. But when we're talking about our primary training sessions, most of our athletes fall into these camps. They're either the elite track, compete track, core track, or the scaled track. And the elite track, this is our our qualifiers, semifinal hopefuls, games hopefuls, high skill, high capacity. These men and women are going for it, right? The compete track is competitive masters and RX athletes. These are moms and dads, full-time jobs, often don't have quite enough breathing room or to recover as much as necessary to do the elite track, or may not be experienced enough to quite do that capacity yet. Our core track is our general preparedness track. I just want to be a fit human being. I want to get it done in about an hour, hour and a half a day. And that's our core track. Our scaled track, more foundational, similar stimulus, but at an appropriate movement pattern or volume for someone that's a little bit newer. The reason I'm bringing this up is that the elite track is going to have the most interference style training. The compete track will dabble in this as well. So, for example, interference around higher skill gymnastics, elite and compete tracks will both experience that.
One of the key differentiators between those two tracks is the battery work. That section that exists in elite is a very clear line in the sand on like what are some of the differences. But I have to say, no way do I want you or myself to undersell that compete track. It's an incredibly competitive track. I did this for like the first, I don't know, 7, 8 months exclusively. I had
Hmm.
tested a couple elites and was like, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I'm ready for that.
Yeah,
And I would still encourage folks, like, I look at this as being incredibly competitive more for like a weekend local comp that will prepare you. But if you're doing competitions that are like full days, 4 days of training of competition, the elite track just has an extra layer of volume that will prepare you for like that extra day or two of competition at like a games, a legends, these kind of big competitions. So I don't know if that's how you think about it. I think we're aligned on that, but that's some of the rationale that I
100%.
use.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on that. And we have to realize, this, I know this, that when you enter the elite track and you're aiming for those multiple day competitions, those international style competitions, you you are increasing the need to be more precise in your nutrition, more precise and specific in your recovery, emphasize your recovery more. And so it isn't for everybody, right? Like, example would be me. Uh, let's see, my son is 9. My youngest is 9. So let's call it 9 years ago when I had a newborn or even a 1-year-old. I can't, you can't, you can't, with 1-year-olds and sleep patterns, you can't recover the way you need to recover in order to do the volume of something like the elite track. Now, once you get through that phase of life and you have a little breathing room, it makes some sense. If you scroll to the next slide, Josh, we sort of talk about this elite track versus the compete track. And you mentioned this, you said this, the elite track specifically has that battery work. For example, battery work, an example would be something like this. Every 3 minutes, do 12 burpee box jump overs and then max unbroken squat cleans at 205, 135. Okay. Gross. First of all, we look at that and there's that sick, demented part of us that's like, that's kind of badass. And there's the other part of us that knows how many rounds of this are we doing? Like, I think it's 4 rounds. I only put the specific in here. But yeah, you're a little nervous because you're thinking I might have a minute or I might have 2 minutes to do these squat cleans. Well, really it's unbroken, so you might do maybe 5. Maybe you'll do like 9 of them. I don't know. But regardless, you are getting this heart rate going and then you're doing heavy lifting, really gnarly stuff there in that elite track. It's a specific battery section of your training. The compete track doesn't do that, right? This is just an extra part of a session. There's a tremendous amount of volume. But the way we bridge that for the compete track is I do want them to have I do want them to touch that a little bit. I want them to sample it. So in their conditioning piece, the last piece they do of the day, they'll have, for example, some of those squat cleans baked into that piece. So for example, what we have on the screen here, for those that can't see it, the compete track on that same day has, 4 time. It's got 50 double unders, 40 wall balls, 30 chest to bar, and finishes with 20 squat cleans. So what we're trying to do between those two tracks is like, let's say you and I are working out together. You're doing the compete track, I'm doing the elite track. We're both touching a lot of the same things. There's a lot of overlap, but there's a definite distinction. While I'm doing the battery work, you are moving on and moving on to your conditioning piece, right? And then if I'm on the elite track, I will have another conditioning piece after this that won't have squat cleans in it. So we do aim to bridge that gap, provide that volume baked into the conditioning piece for the compete track without it being, and then have that elite track be completely separate with the battery piece. So anyway, all that to say is you nailed it. You nailed it on the head, and in that distinction between compete and elite.
I love the fact that there is so much overlap and connective tissue between the tracks. As just a boulder athlete, I want that in my programming that I follow. I don't want to be on one track knowing that the other track that I maybe am aspiring to, participate in more is just radically different. It's on a different train. Like the train is just moving in a different direction. Instead, I want to know that the work that I'm doing now is ultimately setting me up to potentially take on that track if that's part of what I'm aspiring to do. So the overlap between them is clear as day. And in this case, one of the distinctions is the way that I define it is like it's just far more focused concentration. You've separated them a little bit. The compete track distributes or dilutes the movement patterns just a bit more, where the battery is a very concentrated set of movement patterns and stimulus where there is no escaping the interference. The interference is front and center, and then you're going to be asked to go do something that's heavy and high skill. Again, back to the compete track, you're getting all that goodness, but it's just distributed a touch more where the interference is kind of a steady state rather than hitting a really high peak and then asking you to go do the high skill
More.
thing. If that makes any
Very
sense.
true. No, I think you absolutely nailed it on the head. Um, and that is, I work out with guys at the where I train. There's some athletes there that do the compete track, and it's really fun that we often are overlapping with some gymnastics or core endurance pieces that we start off with. And we're together on our primary lifting. A lot of that is unified across the board. And we diverge a little bit when there's battery work, and then we come back together around conditioning with similar time frames. And again, it's just this idea like camaraderie is really a nice thing, and we can all be. And someone could even be doing the core track. They just want to have an extended warm up while we sneak in a little gymnastics endurance. So the interesting thing about a qualifier cycle, and I was sharing this with you via text the other day, is that we have to navigate a timeline through the open. We've got to navigate a timeline to quarterfinals. We have to navigate another timeline to in-person semifinals. And along the way to in-person semifinals, or in affiliate semifinals, that is, there's a couple of in-person semifinals. So it's this crazy schedule. Um, and I love it, actually. So phase one of this qualifier cycle is weeks 1 through 3. This cycle starts the week of the CrossFit Open, and we are training through the open. We want to think of it as a training through the open type situation. For the elite and compete tracks, our actual target is quarterfinals. So we're looking to sort of ramp up and build and sharpen the spear for quarterfinals to ensure we get to semifinals or have it or even do well at quarterfinals. That's our first goal here. For the core track, we are sensitive and with an aim that the open is kind of the Super Bowl for the year. But that doesn't mean, I don't know if you ever did this in your early years of the open. I know I did. I would maybe train hard on Monday, take it easy Tuesday, really easy Wednesday, Thursday rest, and then Friday do an open workout. And on week one, that worked. I,
Yeah.
I felt great. I would do the same thing into week 2. I probably would retest the open on a Monday and then barely train the rest of the week for week 2. And this was at the time when there was like 5 weeks of the
Sure.
open. And I would say that my overall fitness actually decreased as I tapered and tapered and tapered and tapered uh, at that time. It was so what we are doing is we're training, we are being sensitive, particularly on Wednesday, particularly with the core track, to be sensitive to the overall volume on a Wednesday, knowing that 2 days later we do have an open workout. But Saturday is a big flush day. and a training day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, generally training days, a little lighter for the core track. For the elite and compete tracks, training through the open, we are intending to, you know, have Friday be dedicated to the open. We don't need to do additional training that day. I have done that in the past where I've done an open workout and then tried to do more training, and I've never found that to be
Yeah.
very effective. I'm going red on an open workout. That's fine. It's a one and done. It's 3 Fridays of the year where we don't have additional training. But our schedules, like you sort of asked this at the beginning of the podcast, like, so, we've been doing uh, snatches on Mondays through this cycle and clean and jerks on Fridays. What's changing for this next cycle?
Yeah.
Well, we're doing,
Drum
gosh,
roll.
now, yeah, drum roll. Now I literally, because I just did today's training, now I have to look at the cycle, Josh, to ensure that I say this correctly. Because there's there's the first 3 weeks of the cycle through the open, because Friday is this weird day because that's the CrossFit Open test. And then there's the rest of phase 2 of the cycle, which is after the open. So during the open phase, we have clean and jerks on Monday. Of course, before that, we have gymnastics endurance, our pulling gymnastics endurance, which we typically have. Clean and jerks on Monday, conditioning Monday. Tuesday, we have core endurance. We've had that through the surge cycle. I love it. It's sticking. We're going to keep it right there.
Love that.
Longer yellow, so zone 3 type conditioning on Tuesdays. A bit of a grinder day, but not a lot of intensity. Wednesdays, gymnastics endurance again. Instead of Friday, we're doing that on Wednesdays. So we normally do it Mondays and Fridays. We'll do it Mondays and Wednesdays through this 3-week open phase. And we're snatching on Wednesday. We want to hit clean and jerk. We want to hit snatch. We're going to be sensitive and careful about the amount of volume we have there during the open. And since those are only 2 days apart, but we will be doing those. And then we have moderate to max efforts happening on Wednesday. Thursday, active recovery. Ideally, we get into a pool and swim or do some machine work to do some active recovery. Friday is the CrossFit Open. Saturday, we'll be working on our pressing endurance. This is what we're doing on Wednesdays right now in our cycle. We'll do that on Saturday, followed by bench and deadlift, because we have to bench on a regular basis. So it's just necessary.
That's right.
And then during the open, on Saturdays, we often have a red workout. This is where we empty the tank before a rest day. Well, we just emptied the tank during the open, so we're actually going to have a longer, 40-minute multimodal zone 2 effort to finish off Saturdays. It's not 40 minutes on a bike erg, although I do not mind that. I love that. I
Mhm.
love the bike erg, but it'll be 40-minute EMOMs where we've got some carries, we've got some holds, we've got some static holds as well. We do have some machines, a little bit of practice movements through the open in particular, but really focus on zone 4, flushing the system so we can come back Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, have it. That's phase 1
And
of
anticipating
this
a
focus.
potential Monday redo for some folks is
We have an optional Monday redo baked in to the programming. So it will be an optional redo on Monday for all athletes. It'll be on the program. It'll be there to remind you. And some instructions there as well. Like, if you redo this on Monday, here's some things you could do today optionally. For most people, if they are doing a full redo, it's likely, hey, maybe a 30-minute spin, zone 2 spin, maybe it. Because redos are not easier than the first thing, right?
yeah, yeah. By the way, I'll say this out loud. I am really determined to make this open the first open in my history that I don't redo a single open workout.
Hmm. I, I've tried that. I've tried it. I don't think I've ever done it. I've tried it.
Ouch. Okay. So I'm gonna fail here.
I it's this thing where, like, I am racking my brain. Maybe I had 1 year. Maybe there was 1 year because we were traveling. Um, every once in a while, I'll do a workout and I just don't love how I executed it, how it went. And you're like, man, I remember maybe 2 years ago, I think there was the open workout. Maybe it was the first open workout. It was rowing, deadlifts, and double unders. It was a 20-minute AMRAP. What was it, 300-meter row? It was kind of a peculiar, like 300-meter row, 15 deadlifts, double unders, whatever it was. And I went ham on the row. on every round. I just went ham, and I died. I died on this workout, and I just realized afterwards I'd made just this huge tactical error, and my score was fine. There was no problem.
But
But
you knew.
my pride was dented.
Yeah, see,
Nothing I could do.
that's is exactly what happens to me every year. I'll put up a score that's fine. It's fine. It's pretty dang competitive if I'm being honest, but I'm like, "Ugh, I left so much on the table because I blew the strategy, and then I just need to go prove it to myself." And so I end up redoing it for I don't need to, and it ends up compromising one of my training days.
This is true.
And so for that reason, I'm like, I just need to train through the open, like the old qualifier cycle is designed to have us do.
I don't wanna make any promises while we're recording. I can't. I certainly can't make a promise to the world, but we could probably offline try to make a commitment to each other. Like, I gotta do some thinking on this for one and done, and I very much believe in the same way that you do, that by retesting on a Monday, we are compromising our actual goal of doing well at quarterfinals. And for a handful of athletes, I know you and I are among them. We have to do is top 400 in quarterfinals. We've already bought our ticket and booked our planes for an in-person semifinal. We just have to be. We just have to have a pulse through quarterfinals, man. We don't have to to do anything crazy. So, i I love this conversation. I'm sure people are literally laughing. They're like, "Both y'all are full of crap. You're both gonna."
You know, I can think of a few guys that are right now going, "Yeah,
Yeah, right.
happening, dude."
All right, Josh, next slide, phase 2, really quick. So phase 2 is specificity. It really is this idea. Weeks 4 through 10, we're getting more specific about our training and practicing combinations that we often see in quarterfinals and semifinals. So, an example would be something like this. This is actually a pretty quick push through a workout, like double unders, wall balls, chest to bar, overhead squats into ring muscle ups. Um, this workout is fast. It's a bit intense. It's a bit of a test,
It's
and
diverse.
this is a quick one, but this is what we can expect. We can expect testing a decent amount of volume and tolerance to that level of volume that we would see in quarterfinals and semifinal type weekends, and high skill execution under fatigue, which we sort of talked about before. A lot of interference baked into this, but we might think of our time during the open as a slight push, right? We're not over pushing, but we're definitely not decreasing our fitness during the open. We've got to push and a train through. The phase 2 focus is really focused on giving us a good push towards semifinals. In particular, the specific part of this is towards in affiliate semifinals. That is where the majority of Boulder athletes will be competing in a semifinal, in the in affiliate semifinals. Those of us like you and I that might be doing the Legends semifinal or the Magic City semifinal, we will actually have to customize our own, and we can talk about this in the circle group. We'll definitely provide lots of resources around this, our own taper for those in-person semifinals, because they're close to the. I mean, our semifinal is 2 weeks before the in affiliate semifinals. We'll be ready. We'll be fine. But we just want to be able to definitely taper and not be, you know, full
Yeah.
pedal to the metal on that week.
By the way, for those that are listening and not watching, sorry, but you are missing out on some beautiful images and slides here that Jason's pulled together that's helping just structure this conversation. So
Beautiful.
definitely check it out on YouTube if you get a shot.
Gymnastics endurance. This is if you're not a boulder athlete, if you haven't tasted our gymnastics endurance, our intent during this cycle is to build density. So we're building those skills under fatigue in the surge cycle. Now we're building density with interference. I think we'll may have said interference at least 100 times in this
Yeah, we hit our
podcast, and that's
quota for
okay.
sure.
Week 4, an example, birthday box jump overs into bar muscle ups, would be, building volume and tolerance to that level of volume. I mean, we're pushing using our full body in burpee box jump overs, and we're doing the same thing in bar muscle ups. That would be very much an open, I mean, a quarterfinal, semifinal type effort. Week 7, for example, we've got double unders into a ring muscle up complex where we have toes to rings, into ring muscle ups, into ring dips, which is just super fun. This is training. We're probably not going to be tested on that, but we're building this shoulder stamina again in that fog of fatigue. Week 9, as an example, thrusters into bar muscle ups. And this is just our gymnastics opener. These are not meant to be all out maximal efforts. They're just meant to be building that gymnastics volume with a decent amount of fatigue.
I can't tell you, Jason, on how many times either this exact part of our programming has come up in conversation on a podcast or in just interacting with an athlete, they call out, man, and then I got on Boulder and we do these Metcons before the Metcons, and in they're referencing the gymnastic stuff that we do out of the gate. And very consistently, while everybody has a bit of a like, wow, that's a lot of work right out of the gate,
Yeah.
everybody loves it. Or at least the folks that I
Yeah.
talk to, maybe, they're telling me what I want to hear. But I certainly have come to really enjoy these because they're so concentrated that, man, I'm 10 minutes into my training and I feel like I've already accomplished so much. I've got
Yes.
got a great pump. I'm sweating. My nervous system is activated. I've worked on something that I really need to work on. And then I'm off to the next thing. And so it just starts me with such a productive element to the day that now I would not want to do it any other way. It's just one of my favorite parts of it.
It feels like cheating. I mean, it feels like cheating. It feels, and what I mean by that is we are sneaking in this appropriate intensity level of volume, and we get huge rewards from it without a significant cost, time and effort wise. And if you weren't warm for your lifting, you were guaranteed to be warm. You were guaranteed. Every once in a while, you might finish that gymnastics endurance piece. You're like, wow, my shoulders are a little cooked. I got to do some clean and jerks now. But by the time you warm up for clean and jerks, you go through the primer and you actually get to your working weight. Like today, for example, after
Perfect.
doing deficit handstand push-ups and rope climbs, when it came to the jerks, my shoulders were fine. And I'm acclimated to this, of course. But this, you bring up an important point, and I think athletes have to experience this. Uh, be, be, they just have to experience it to understand really what we mean by this. But the key point about being able to do this level of volume, because what we are doing is we are stacking a lot of volume into a session in the most efficient way possible. I know you get your sessions done in like an hour and a half, maybe less sometimes. And it's got, on average, a gymnastics endurance piece, a weightlifting primer, a weightlifting piece, a battery, a weightlifting strength piece, and then a conditioning piece. I mean, that's an insane amount of volume right there, right? And the important point to note is that the recipe says this element is a yellow effort. This is a sustainable effort. It says this part is a green effort. It's a very, you're just lifting. This isn't a high heart rate effort. This part is an orange effort, not max effort, orange threshold type training. This part might be red, or this part might be red. The recipe has these color codes baked into it so that when we inject this huge amount of volume into our lives, we do it at an appropriate intensity so that our body has the ability to do something the next day, and then the next day, and the next day.
Yeah.
And we talk about this all the time, but the danger is overtraining. When you have this much volume, you have to be really careful with overtraining. And our safety mechanism baked into this is our color coding intensity system, right? So last thing I'll say about this is, let's say you're an athlete, and today, Josh, you and I we did 4 rounds. We had a legless rope climb, then a regular rope climb, and then max deficit handstand push-ups. And we did this within a 2-minute window, rested 2 minutes. We did this 4 times. That was how we started off the day today. And then we had plenty of volume the rest of the day. If this were to destroy somebody, it would really ruin the rest of the day of training, right? And so, it makes sense to know that, like, okay, our start today was yellow. You're looking to stay in zone 3 if you're using a heart rate monitor. You're looking to maintain a sustainable effort, meaning at the end of this, you could have done a few more rounds. So you don't have to break any records on the amount of handstand push-ups you do. And I remind that to the athletes, I'm like, hey, we don't need to break records. We're just getting some handstand push-up volume along with rope climbs. But it's that consistent density done under an appropriate amount of intensity, or appropriately low level of intensity, that allows us to accumulate this amount of volume without killing ourselves. Just
Yeah.
want to throw that in there.
No,
Yeah.
I like that. And, this feels like a good time to call out this one point that I made this sorry, not to make this sound like this is a groundbreaking, revolutionary thing, but it is valuable to call out. And I made this call to a group of buddies of mine when we first started Boulder, when we were first going through that, like, hey, we're trying to acclimate to this level of volume, like that stage of holy cow. And here's a fact, which is if you're working through some movement inefficiencies, if you have movement inefficiencies and you know it, for example, you've got an impinged shoulder, you got a knee that caves in, you've got an Achilles that doesn't want to stretch and be elastic. If you've got something going on, if you add a bunch of volume on top of that inefficiency, something's going to happen that's probably not great. You're probably going to tweak something. You're probably going to make something a little bit worse. And so it's really important to stress that if you're going to take on this kind of volume, you really need to double down on the quality of your movement first. Because when you put a bunch of volume on really high quality movement, man, you are going to reap the rewards. But if you put some volume on top of some kinks, guess what? The kinks don't iron themselves out under
They don't.
volume. The kinks get kinkier. And so write that down. That's a good line.
Yeah, we want to put this one on social. We're gonna bookmark this one. AI, please. The kinks get kinkier. You
Kinks.
couldn't have said that more. It's a great way to say it, Josh. It's so true. And taking a step back to fix a movement inefficiency is totally okay. Take one step back so you can take many steps forward appropriately. I think that's a very, very good point. Next slide, Josh. Let's just touch on this weightlifting battery. We are working our way through this. The weightlifting battery, it's just for the elite track. We touched on this already. We'll just mention this. It's the ability to cycle moderate to heavy loads while the heart rate is spiked. That's what we mean by battery. Uh, it's not a fancy word. It's just lifting heavy under respiratory distress. An example of a clean battery would be like, every 3 minutes, 15 calorie echo bike sprint, which is fun, and then one round of DT. The goal is unbroken cycling on that round of DT. And you do this every 3 minutes, and we're going to do this 3 to 4 rounds. It is this dedicated dosage, like you said. It's very specific. It's very, very challenging, but it's also not an incredible amount of volume. It's one round of DT. That's not that big of a deal. You just happen to be not able to breathe during that entire minute. It's no big deal.
That's right.
But again, it's an appropriate amount of volume, and building the calluses around the pain level that goes with that. That's all. It's a tolerance thing to me, and giving your body the ability to practice these things in small doses pays dividends when it is required at higher dosages in competition.
You can read that word battery and maybe a few different things come to mind. The more productive battery in this case is like the Duracell battery, and ultimately you're building the capacity of that battery. It doesn't drain nearly as quickly, but you're sustaining the energy level there. That's how I prefer to view this segment now.
The last thing I want to talk about during this cycle is recovery protocols we have baked into this. Um, or baked into our training. Just sort of want to express that we are not just we're not just being ourselves. We're not just intaking volume. We need to uh, very much pay attention to intentionally our recovery. It's not just I'm not training today. Recovery isn't just that. So, for example, Thursdays we do offer optional ideas for Thursdays. One of them is a swim, and I do. We have option one is a swim. Option two is a machine flush, like a zone two on a machine. Option three is, of course, just getting more sleep that day. I mean, if it means you're going to get an extra 2 hours of sleep instead of getting up early, do that, or take a walk with your family. Like, pay attention, buddy. You'll come back Friday feeling refreshed. But if you can get into a pool, that's one of the best ways to recover. Not only are we going to be rhythmic in our breathing, almost forced rhythm in our breathing, a forced pace in the water. And the amount of swimming that we do on a Thursday is long with the intention to build your swimming capacity. I mean, that's nice, but force you to not go hard. This isn't 50-meter sprints generally. It's it's long, like 400-meter efforts. And CrossFitters shouldn't be crushing 400 meters. This should take like a good 6, 7, 8 minutes to work our way through that, rest, do it again. There's also, I didn't know about this until I did a little bit of research, a little bit of hydrostatic pressure just by being in the water. It actually has some compressive nature to it that helps promote the flushing of all that buildup in your system. We want to flush that. So that's our Thursdays. On Saturdays through the open, especially, in order to train at the highest level Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we will have that Saturday zone 2 flush to finish up our Saturday sessions through the open. This is how we take care of ourselves training through the open. And then finally, what I wanted to mention was we have our capacity sessions. This is our second sessions. These can be done first thing in the morning. They can be done late at night. We want to make sure we have at least like 3 to 4 hours at least between our capacity session and our main training session. We want to allow our body to refuel, recover, even though those capacity sessions are not hard efforts. During this entire cycle, you'll love this. I love this. We are doing hour-long capacity sessions. They're 1 hour. You pretty much don't need to warm up. You could just get on the bike, get on the rower. You can just get out there and get going. And it's going to be zone 2 efforts with a skill. We've done zone 2 with a skill historically. We're calling this zone 2 with reinforcement. So it might look something like on Fridays, as we work our way through phase 2, we'll be doing zone 2 with pistol squat development as part of our single leg work on Fridays. So it might be, 10 minutes on the row. Well, it's a 60-minute effort. We might go row, bike, ski, and we might be cycling through that every 10 minutes for this hour. But every transition, we're going to hop off and we're going to do like 3 to 4 different movements that are reinforcing a movement pattern. So on Fridays, we tend to focus on single leg health. So it might be, uh, you know, uh, eccentric box step downs because we're working on that unilateral, that single leg strength. But we're ideally getting to the point where in this cycle, we're just going to on Fridays be focusing more on building that ability to do pistol squats in the event that we see them in quarterfinals and semifinals. Sometimes they sneak in there and we don't want that to be surprising to us. But either way, the ability to build the capacity for that with single leg work is important. So all of our capacity sessions, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, they're all 60-minute sessions. They're all on machines. However, every 5 to 10 minutes, we will hop off the machine to do some reinforcement work. It keeps it stimulating.
Yeah.
Also, it keeps super efficient, but it also ensures that you're doing reinforcement work on the days with a stimulus that's similar to the theme for that day. Mondays, for
I
example.
understand.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I love it. I love that efficiency. And so we'll be doing that through this 10-week cycle, just to make sure that we've got this. We've got a lot of work to do as far as training goes. We want to make that capacity session as easy with as little friction to get started as possible. For me, it's wake up, put my contacts in, drink water, and get on the machine in the garage.
I often do that myself. In fact, so as you know, like I didn't do a single two a day until a couple months ago. Leading up to the game, like my whole season, never a single two a day. And so that was a big like, okay, this season I'm going to build that in and I'm going to see what that looks like and is it realistic in my schedule and can I sustain that? And so I had to start with some really sexy capacity sessions. Like I need to build something that was like so appealing that it was going to draw me out there. And
Yes.
what those ended up looking like for me was much like what you just described. It was something really simple, some transition between pieces of equipment with a skill built in that was fun and engaging and just kind of captured my energy and attention and I've since really fallen in love with them and been doing more of what's actually programmed in terms of those capacity sessions. So yeah, I like the way that you've outlined that, and certainly I appreciate the intent.
It's this thing. It's almost like you're raising you're raising your water level, right? If we think of capacity as a water level, right? And when we're training and we do that single session and we have plenty of volume in that and we're raising that volume or that water level, but this is such low hanging fruit, and it's such a non-stress to your body way to increase that water level. The only cost is time, and not everyone has that, and that's okay. It's there. Mm, we've talked about the imbalance that it takes to be high level of anything. There's a little bit of imbalance in there, but the cost is time. And I mean, I'm the same as you. I have to look forward to it. And my secret is, or the secret for me that works for me, is finding a show that I can binge watch through my capacity sessions. I've gone through Breaking Bad, I've gone through Better Call Saul, I've done all of these. Now I'm working my way through Peaky Blinders, and
Yeah.
I can't wait for Monday. I'm already sad. It's a Friday. I'm not doing a capacity session tomorrow, and I will not allow myself to watch any episodes except during my capacity sessions. So I wake up like I can't wait to get out there. I'll even turn it on while I'm drinking my water. I like sort of cheat. Like I want to get the
You're
full
drinking the
episode.
seal.
So yeah,
No, that's a great tip, and that's a great show as well. Yeah, check it out if you haven't seen it already.
if you are not in the Boulder Athlete Circle, if you're listening to this and you're a Boulder athlete and you're not just an observer or an active participant in the Boulder Athlete Circle group, we do have some fun things in the circle group. Like besides the fact that we have people that ask questions that can get clarity around training, clarity around competitions, even competition strategy. You can have your form reviewed if you upload a video. You have access to me and all of us at Boulder Athlete. And starting in February, we'll have active challenges in there. So we're going to release this Monday. We literally like you want a free shirt or something free. We want to find things that we can give away for free. We will release the details on Monday. It'll be our first monthly challenge for Boulder athletes. It's all for fun. And I know that these challenges will get stupid competitive and mistakes will be made by athletes. And that's fine. It's all for fun. We will try to introduce movement patterns that won't send people to the hospital when we're talking about these challenges. So it will be good. And I can't wait to share the first one. I guarantee I will not be the winner of the first one. I will say that. If anyone who knows me knows I'm not winning the first one, it's a movement that is not, I'm not great. I actually need to practice more. So I'm just going to say that. What could it be? You'll have to find out. Actually, when we release this, you'll already know, but that's okay. It's a reminder to get out there. We have monthly challenges.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Actually, that came up in the circle group, and so let me use this opportunity to give a little plug to an upcoming podcast that you'll be on, Jason. We're internally we're calling these the BLT podcast, the Boulder Leadership Team. I think they're going to be a really cool way for us to one let the Boulder community get to know all of the leadership team, including Aaron and Adam, who often are just working their tails off behind the scenes. Great dudes, great humans, and just amazing members of the leadership team. So I want the community to know them, but also an opportunity for us to express, some of the things that we're thinking through behind the scenes in terms of strategy and how we grow the business, how we support our athletes, just what's really topical. And as part of that, I put out a question in the circle group in advance to say, hey, what are some things you want us to address on that podcast? We got some really cool responses. One of them was, are you guys thinking about these challenges? And so we are, and it's coming. And that's one of a few things that we'll hit on in that BLT podcast coming soon. So keep an eye out for it. Happy Friday. Thanks for doing this, Jason. I love all these insights. I love how passionate you are about this. I think you could talk about this for another couple hours if we let
Yeah.
you.
Literally trying to be brief. This was me trying to be brief, guys. I apologize after the fact, but this was me being as brief as I could.
I love it, man. Hey, have a great weekend. And if for those that are watching and listening, if you have not yet, subscribe, like, comment, do all the things. It's really meaningful to us. So thanks, y'all.